Hello everyone, it's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle, and I am sure there are many a skeptical viewer out there right now shaking his or her heads at the very notion of Tiger Woods being a sex addict. After all, how many times have we seen a powerful, charismatic man put it all on the line for a little something on the side? Well, this time it seems different, because experts in the field of sexual counseling are suggesting that Tiger's behavior has all the earmarks of a person struggling with addiction. The seemingly endless number of affairs, the high-risk behavior, and the very public humiliation. In just a moment, we'll be talking with an expert in the field of sexual addiction, and we'll meet a couple who is struggling to overcome his addiction to sex. But first, I want to give you a chance to tell us what you think. Do you think it is possible to become addicted to sex? Do you think that's what's happened with Tiger Woods? Or do you think it's just a convenient way for him to explain all his extramarital affairs? How about you? Have you ever known anyone who has battled such an addiction? And would you know the signs if a loved one actually was suffering from this? If you have questions or comments, you can log on to csnphilly.com and then put in "It's Your Call" or IYC under our search title. That'll take you to my webpage where you can leave me a comment. You can also email me directly right here at the show at tcn_IYC@comcastnetwork.com. And as always, you find us on Facebook, MySpace, and YouTube. As I said, we're going to meet a man who is an admitted sexaholic and his wife, whose identities we are protecting because of the stigma that's associated with this addiction. But first, for more information on it, we're joined by Kara Tripodi. She is a licensed clinical social worker and the executive director of the STAR program, which provides professional, caring, and confidential treatment for sexually related disorders to individuals and their partners. Kara, thank you for returning and talking to us about this. Do you believe, in your professional experience, that Tiger Woods is showing signs of being a sexaholic?
Without knowing him or meeting him or being able to diagnose him, I can't really speak directly about him, but what I can say is the behaviors that he's exhibiting is very, very familiar to a lot of men and women I work with who display similar kinds of characteristics.
Give me an example of some of the characteristics that you see in Tiger Woods that you've also seen in patients or individuals that you've counseled.
Usually it's some form of out-of-control sexual behavior. In the case of Tiger, it had to do with many women that he met in kind of bars or escorts, and that's very similar to other people that I work with, where they make a commitment not to do the behavior and they can't stop doing it, and they create a lot of lies in order to cover their behavior.
Now, you know what? I hate to say this, but there are a lot of women who are going to watch this show and they're going to throw up their hands in skepticism and say, hey, this just sounds like a guy who can't control himself, or he's just too big on himself. He's just a guy acting like a guy.
Right. Well, and there's some truth in terms of the, you said in your introduction that it's bad behavior, and it actually is considered bad behavior when you're doing it and it's hurting those around you. But there are a lot of men, and society really does promote that men do this kind of behavior. But what's different around somebody that presents with sexually compulsive behaviors is the pattern is out of control and it's over time, and they're unable to stop despite the consequences, and they need more and more in order to get the same kind of high.
Now, obviously with Tiger Woods, the consequences have been very great.
Yes.
And they've been very public.
Yes.
A lot of people are wondering, why did all of this break when it did? If this behavior had been going on for years, even decades, why now?
Because usually it's when it becomes in a more intimate way, meaning the loved one, in this case his wife, found out, and that's what broke. It sounds like the cascade of events that, there was some sort of domestic issue between them that then brought all the media attention, and all these other women came forward.
But if you have compulsive behavior, like some are suggesting,
yes.
and Tiger has not admitted to anything.
That's right.
So this is all speculation. But if there is a compulsive behavior, do you become more daring? Do you need more and more in order to get
You're willing to take more
the
risk.
satisfaction?
Right. The threshold, and this gets a little bit into some of the other ways that the influences of what makes somebody an addict, and there's certain things around pleasure, the pleasure center of the brain, that we need more and more in order to get the same level of pleasure. And that's a little bit what we call risk-taking, is that the normal amounts aren't doing it for somebody, so they need more in order to get the same kind of high, so you're willing to take more risks to do that.
Is it much like drug or alcohol abuse or addiction?
There are similarities in the sense that the same amount doesn't do it, so you're willing to try more drug or different types of drug in order to get the same kind of high. And the same is true with people with sexually compulsive behaviors. So they might, for example, some people start with online porn or just viewing porn, and then they might get into progressive behavior where they take the online behavior offline. Or they might flirt, and then in time they'll start flirting towards sexual encounters with the person.
Now, of course, as I said, we do not know that this is what is Tiger's excuse for behavior. He has not said anything other than to admit that his behavior has been disruptive to his marriage, and he has apologized, as we all know, publicly to his wife. But we do know that our next guest are admitted individuals who are dealing with this problem. I'd like to introduce you now to a man who is recovering from being a sexaholic. Sandy is speaking out, albeit anonymously, to let others know that there is help out there for him and them. His wife, Jean, is here to talk about the impact this kind of behavior has on loved ones. So we'd like to thank them both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Sandy, let me begin with you. You are obviously doing this interview in silhouette so that you are not identified. Is that because there is a stigma attached to this kind of addiction?
It's partially because of that, and obviously it may affect my family members if it was disclosed, who I am, my adult children, and also it's part of our traditions in Sexaholics Anonymous that we remain anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films.
How do you know that you are a sexaholic and not just someone who exercises bad behavior?
Well, as Kara had remarked, my behavior started out simpler. It was masturbation with pornography, and then eventually flirting with women at work, then asking them to lunch, then dinner, then having multiple affairs in my first marriage. To ultimately, I destroyed the marriage. I kept saying I'd stop. I meant that I would stop, but I was powerless over stopping. So, as a result, I destroyed my first marriage out of this addiction.
Explain to me what you mean by being powerless over this addiction, because I know there are people who are going to be listening to this interview and who are going to come to the conclusion that if you wanted to stop this behavior, you could. You simply just had to cease.
Well, in my particular case, I was a son from a divorced marriage, and I always said I'd never do what my dad did, and what my dad had done was gone out, married a much younger woman, and left the family. And I always said I would never do that. That was one of my number one goals in my marriage, and yet I continued to have affairs and just couldn't stop. I went to some counselors, before I started going to the store. I went to other ones. I tried medication. I even went inpatient for this addiction.
Now, you obviously are in a relationship yet again with Jean, your wife, who has agreed to speak with us as well. Jean, I have to ask why you would allow yourself to become involved with someone who had such a history of this kind of sexual misbehavior.
Well, sure, that says something about me. We initially were involved 15 years ago, and it only lasted a little over a year when I couldn't take his behavior any longer, and I had to ask myself why on earth I would put myself through it.
Did he try to hide his affairs from you, or
yes.
was it quite apparent to you that something was going on?
Well, both. I mean, it was quite apparent to me, but yes, he did try to hide it. He did lie. He went to great lengths to create stories about where he was and what he was doing and why he had certain phone numbers, and it was really insane, and any sensible person could see that he was lying. And so I had to conclude that I clearly I wasn't looking to be in a committed relationship if I was trying to be in a relationship with a person with these issues.
But you did extricate yourself from the relationship. Now let's fast forward, and you remain friends. You ultimately helped him as he came to this conclusion that he was a sexaholic. Why, as a woman, did you feel it was important to stay with him and help him through this?
Well, we remained friends, but he's the person who got through it. Nobody can recover for someone else. He had to do it.
Okay.
But I supported his efforts. I remained friends with